It's your boy Stephen A. in the house. I'm hosting yet again this particular morning. And I know you just see me lounging, chilling, being who I am. But there's levels, and I just needed to show everybody what's going on. Look at this brother right here. I mean, did you see the ensemble? What are we doing? Let's get it right. Let's get it right. Let's get it right.
You gotta go here, right? Go here. You gotta hit him here with that right there. You gotta hit him with that right there. Then you hit him with the Stephen A. leg, the slow right leg. The left leg, the slow right leg.
Right there. And look at this brother right here with a decent suit for a change.
What the hell? With a good suit, we got stretchy fabric. I could play catcher if you need to. Get down here. And also, talking about walks, I want America to just know this. I know the show just started. You walked into the studio like this. Move.
Go ahead.
It was like you were trying to tear your hamstring every stretch you took. That's how you walked into the studio. You stride too long.
See what I got to do?
You stride too long.
He ruined the cold open.
He ruined it. I made it.
With his sneakers.
These are great.
6 in the house.
These are great.
Let's go.
They're better than yours.
You must be.
First Take is presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the latest edition of First Take in the house with my man Dan Orlovsky and, of course, RC himself, the one and only Ryan Clark. We are here today. Got a lot of stuff to get into. You see, I don't really have to put up my rules and regulations. These brothers know what the rules entail. You will speak when spoken to. You will address me as Mr. Stephen A. or Stephen A. You will not be rude. You will not crack too many jokes. And thank God you're in studio, Dan Orlovsky, because we don't have to see you sending in one of them damn videos, okay? One of them videos when you're supposed to be off, by the way. You're supposed to be off.
Dude ain't never off.
Why didn't you respond to the video?
Because it was annoying. It was annoying. Let's get started with tonight's matchup. Dolphins at Buffalo Bills. Tua Tagovailoa and the Dolphins have a tall task ahead of them as they head to Buffalo to take on Josh Allen and the 2-0 Bills, including playoff. Miami has lost each of their last 9 games in Buffalo, tied for the second longest losing streak in franchise history. Not to mention, in the last 2 weeks, Miami stunk so bad, they're already having player-only meetings. Sort of mentioned that. RC, is McDaniel's job on the line tonight?
Are people gonna still be standing outside of stores trying to get Jordans until he dies? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, Mike McDaniels is in a situation to where this team is not only not performing well, but the thing that he actually allowed them to do well when he became the head coach, they no longer do. They no longer stretch the field. They no longer make dynamic plays. And I know what people are going to say, well, what about last week versus the New England Patriots? Jalen Waddle had some big plays. We watched Tyreek Hill catch a punt for 48 yards. We saw Devon Achane make a play where he just steps out of bounds right before he scores a touchdown. But the Miami Dolphins are regressing. The Miami Dolphins were a team that we thought were on the ascend. The Miami Dolphins got to the playoffs and couldn't perform because it was too damn cold in Kansas City. And ever since then, we've watched this team decline. And so to me, you look at the next 2 games, you have the Jets and you have the Panthers. You can now put an interim head coach in a position to help this team win in those next 2 games before you have a tough game in the third one. So I think tonight is all important to Mike McDaniels.
It's a results-based business, right? I mean, you'd be sitting at 0-3. You would have 4 straight losses. They're giving up in the last month like 35 points a game. Talk about Tyreek finally catching that 30-plus yard pass. That was their first time in a year. So to RC's point, kind of what he was brought to do there. Tua played better in week 2, but maybe not exactly the way that we would want Tua to play, like we saw him play in that first year or 2. And so you're trying to find the silver lining because, like, staring at 0-3 in the reality of the playoffs and what the future could be like, it's just how this business works. So it feels must win for Miami going up against a team that's as good as anybody in football in the Buffalo Bills. You got to go win the football game. I don't know the last time the Dolphins beat a team with a winning record. And some of it is you wanted to see the offense evolve. We've all, for about 2 years now talked about, Tua in the pass game, it's awesome, timing. Can we get physical and run the football? Haven't really done that. So it's a results-based business. It's a tall task. The vibes haven't been great. They played better. It feels like must win.
Do y'all know that the Miami Dolphins are the only team since 2000 to allow points on the first 10 opponents' possessions to start a season? I mean, nobody's done that in 25 years. But the Miami Dolphins have. And then I think about how this team can't play in inclement weather. And listen, y'all play football. I didn't. Here's my deal. How are you an NFL team and everybody knows you don't have a chance if the temperature is 40 degrees or lower? I mean, think about that for a second here. So, to me, when I look at McDaniels, we were calling him a boy genius, where he came into Miami, he got them the 2 wild card playoff berths or whatever. What has happened over the last 2 years to Miami in y'all estimation under Mike McDaniels?
Well, I think the first thing is the quarterback has regressed. The quarterback has had injuries that does affect the way that you can perform on the football field. Now, you've also had situations where your leaders don't know how to conduct themselves as leaders, whether that's away from the building or within the building. There are people who don't or who can't have a voice on how you're supposed to work, how you're supposed to show up, what sort of discipline you're supposed to have as a player and as a man. And there's also not a strong voice at the top. I love Mike McDaniels. I love talking to him. I think he's extremely intelligent. I think he understands the game of football. But what's happened to this locker room is this locker room has gotten away from him. His leaders rather talk about things publicly than talk about things privately. His leaders aren't going to him and say, hey, Mike, can we sit in a meeting together so we can get straight what we have to do to win?
How does a coach lose the locker room, lose the players in terms of having a kind of effect on them where they're conducting themselves appropriately and professionally? How does that happen?
I don't know if he's lost the locker room.
Okay.
We don't know that because sometimes wins and losses aren't necessarily attached to that. I will say this, to answer your question, name me the guys in Miami that you know. Give me the names of the players of the guys that you know.
Tyreek Hill, Waddle, now Minka Fitzpatrick, he's back. Those are the guys I know.
It's not a roster that feels that there's this tremendous amount of talent. If I asked you to do that with the Chargers and or the Ravens, you would rattle off 7, 8, 9 names. So I think there's a little bit how does it happen to go from a team 2 years ago that was the #1 seed in early December to where they are now is some of the talent hasn't developed. The rush guys like a Bradley Chubb and a Jalen Phillips, the injuries pulled them back, and so they got to get healthy. And then how does the coach lose the locker room? RC knows this. Winning covers everything in the NFL. It just does. There's that saying, winning cures all. It does, and it just covers everything. And they just haven't won as consistently as they've needed to. And then also players know, they know Baltimore knows that Baltimore can go play in any type of environment. The Bills know that they can play in any type of environment. The Chiefs know that at least the Chiefs of old play in any environment. I think the players in Miami know who they are as well. I think that they know that they can go chuck and duck.
Yeah, but the other thing is this, though. You put your team together to play in any environment. With everything that was going on with Josh Allen, all the things that we said about his mechanics coming out of college, with all the things that he had to work on from an accuracy standpoint, what they knew was he could go play physically in Buffalo.
Totally.
When you draft Tua Tagovailoa, there's only certain things that he can do.
Right.
When the question is, or when the statement is always, his superpower is accuracy. His superpower is anticipation. None of those things have to do with the physical, which makes it difficult to play in inclement weather.
Which is why I think your GM is in trouble, because ultimately it's going to come back to why was Tua picked instead of Justin Herbert when you knew physically he may have some limitations. For example, how you going to look in inclement weather, being undersized,